All right.
Mr. AK Simba, all the way from Uganda via Belgium. How are you?
I'm very well, Roberta. Good catching you up. It's been a crazy year this year. I'm very well, thank you. I'm very glad that we can be able to catch up today.
It's really wonderful seeing you, at least virtually. Normally, if it would have been 2019 or 2020 as we know it, we would have now been in Zimbabwe working on your masterclass. But in the event, this is not possible physically. We are now meeting virtually. Thank you very much for having time and being again part of the European Film Festival in 2020, the first digital format. So thank you very much for your time, AK. And how is Belgium? How are you doing there in the cold?
Belgium is okay. Usual cold. Had a changeover in time, so yeah, of course, it becomes a bit different. Normally, it's the same time as in Zimbabwe or in Southern Africa, but now there's an hour difference since the clock changed last weekend. But everything is okay. I'm still safe and sound. There's no COVID in my space. I hope it doesn't come up soon. But I'm very excited, and I'm very much looking forward to also celebrating, celebrating the festival, but mostly facilitating my workshop that I should normally have been there in body, but now have to conduct it digitally. So I'm nonetheless still excited, to be able to share information and knowledge.
Yeah. So you are not new to the film festival, but maybe some people are tuning in who have not met you before. Maybe you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your personal, but also filming background. That would be really nice to get to know you a bit better.
All right. Well, my name is AK Simba. I'm a Ugandan. I was born and raised in Uganda. I spent the biggest part of my life actually in Uganda. Not until a couple of years, say 7-6 years ago, that I moved with my family to Belgium. But my film career didn't start in Europe, so I started my film career in Uganda. That is pretty much almost 20 years ago. And it was an interesting journey because then there was not so many young filmmakers. Most of the filmmakers that were in Uganda or even in Africa in general were mostly the traditional broadcasters. I wouldn't call them necessarily filmmakers because they were really just doing a service. So cameramen for news, cameramen for television, but there was not so much of independent, let's say, filmmakers. And I come from that breed of young independent filmmakers, the first breed of young independent filmmakers, say in Africa or in most specifically in Uganda. So I started off like any other person would say in film. Started off as a production runner, but my most interesting entry point was doing research. So I started off doing research for a production company, then was called Great Lakes Films. And my job was just always to run ahead of production, to go, recce, do research about a topic, and then come back and update the production, and then they would go and shoot. But then I was already, of course, technical, and that helped me a lot. So I slowly rose through the ranks, worked in the camera department, had my history with graphics, also worked in the edit room as well. And right about 2008, 7-8, I just worked as an intern, as an intern or a PA on Last King of Scotland. That was the first major film I worked on, but I was really in the background. And that really pushed me to feel like I think I belong to this world. Mm-hmm. I was thrilled by the whole government of film, looking at how many people were on the set, how much control they had over just a movie. And that sparked off the energy in me to really say, I'm going to go and and I'm gonna be a filmmaker. I want to be on set.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, from there on, I got my second call job for the local film in 2008, where it was an accidental job because there was actually all the position had been filled up. And I remember very well a friend of mine, she used to be the managing director of the company, may her soul rest in peace, Helen. And she asked me about art department. And I had no idea about what the art department was because I was just like, okay, so what is the art department? Like every person mistakes the art department for. I thought it was just a department where you just collected art pieces and then maybe did some research on art. I never understood why someone would work in the art department because traditionally we knew filmmaking was just being a cameraman. That was it, and being an actor. So maybe costume, but the rest of the things that happened in the background were not considered part of the necessary resources to achieve a film. So yes, I worked there. That was my first job as a prop master. It was terrible. I was not. I was very keen. I did my best. I had done some little research. There was no Google's maybe still fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things depended on reading books and asking people. There was a friend of mine who worked in a theater, and he explained to me what the word props meant. So from that point on, he said, you could really become a good art director because you have passion. So well, the words kept popping to me, and I was like, okay, these words seem to be interesting. Maybe I should do some research. So after that job, I really felt like I belonged in art. I felt like I understood what art was. So I went on and started doing a lot of research and studies for myself. And the next year, that was around 2000, I got my first international job. And that was when I came in as a set decorator. And then it was a brilliant job. My production designer was very happy with me. It was an American and South African production. They recommended me highly. And after just, I think, 2 months, there was another production that came in. And this time I was asked to come in as an art director. And I rose quickly through the ranks because I was very consistent. I was very reliable. So that really helped me to grow through the ranks very fast because there was actually nobody doing art department in Uganda that I knew. So it was for me try and error. I was starting and I was doing it on my own by myself. And not because there was not people, I didn't know anyone because almost everybody I knew then as an independent filmmaker was either a cameraman, an editor, or a director, or a producer. So there were no people doing art. And I said, this is my spot. I'm gonna sit here and stay there.
It sounds very interesting, and it sounds like a combination of you tapping into a niche because there were not so many, so it's actually an opportunity, understanding that there are actually very few, but then also a combination of really hard work and determination, because without that, I think passion alone is probably not enough.
No, the passion was not enough because it was a department that nobody cared for. It was a department which had no budget. Mm-hmm. So it took a lot of convincing to convince people or directors that look, you need an art person on your film set. And a few of the people who had been maybe on international jobs or who had worked on bigger productions, they understood the importance of the art department. Mm-hmm. But so often there was no budget for it, so there was no need for an art person. But what helped me therefore was, I'm usually a person who likes to invest what I earn from my craft. So almost everything I made from all those jobs I've talked about, I reinvested them in myself. So I did a lot of research, paying for myself. Yeah. I, of course, bought off a lot of things from productions that were leaving. I used my money to buy most of the little essential things I needed to work on the next job. So that gave me a bit of a leeway to grow very
Yeah.
fast, because I was investing in something I knew that at one point the industry would open,
Yeah.
and it would need people who were ready, and I wanted to be ready when the industry opened.
And I have been very fortunate when we were last year, I think we were at the same time in Kampala, and you took me to your props shop. And I was very impressed because and I know taking things from Europe to Africa, it's not an easy thing. I mean, it's not like you took a container. So over years, you actually, each time you travel to Uganda, you go with an extra suitcase with things you have collected on flea markets or on eBay, or I don't know how exactly you collect your things. But now being in Uganda, being in that prop store, it feels like lots of film sets could be made just from your prop store. That is really incredible.
I mean, that's the part that for you to be an art person, you don't have to, it doesn't just stop at your degree that you get from school. Art is, I say to myself, like, everybody's art is life.
Yeah.
So if you don't love it,
Yeah.
it doesn't manifest itself. And for me, I can't live without art. You know, every day I spend at least an hour researching, or right now I'm actually, I really wanted to dash out to run to an antique store, just to look, just to you know, like, just to give myself some optical pleasure by looking at different collections, meeting different collectors, sharing ideas, and so on and so forth. So my journey, I cannot necessarily say that it's been a smooth road for me to be here. It's, if you can imagine starting something that nobody's been interested in, and bringing it to a level where everybody becomes, to a level where everybody becomes aware of it. And now it becomes a part of a life for any filmmaker to know that you need an art person. And that has taken me 10 years, consistently trying to create this awareness. And I'm very proud and glad that, you know, it's changing the way cinema is looking, especially the quality of films that are now coming out of Uganda, out of Africa, that there is now an eye to detail, because the craft or the trade has been given a life.
Yeah. And also, I would like to have some of your, it would be interesting to hear some of your reflections. You have been now twice to Zimbabwe. You have been part of the planning of the film festival. You supported us with your insights as a film practitioner who is on the global stage, so to speak. But what I would really like to hear from you, having had a first masterclass focusing on understanding your friend, talking about props and the art department, what was the reaction of the participants? I mean, did you feel they knew what you were talking about, or was it also a little bit of an eye-opener? Or what is kind of your experience in that regard, since it's kind of such an unknown department?
I mean, before I went to Zimbabwe, I'd already done my homework. So I like I do usually for anything, I do research. And Zimbabwe being geographically well placed, I mean, I call it well placed because it's very close to South Africa. For any filmmaker who is living in sub-Saharan Africa, let's say Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, around the East African zone, South Africa is their closest point, reference point. So I thought in my mind, Zimbabwe being so close to South Africa, there must be such a great and such big film, not only industry, but a lot of very many experienced people, you know. So when I came in, I was actually shocked, because not so many people knew about props, for instance, or they either heard about them, but they didn't understand the importance of why you needed a prop person or an art person on your film set. So my experience from day one was like, okay, I had already kind of prepared my mind, thinking that I was gonna teach a class that was pretty much very experienced. So we were just gonna be sharing notes, and I realized that, okay, understanding this frame was not everyone's piece of cake. So I had to really adjust my mind and adjust the way my approach, and take it from ground zero. And it was interesting for me to see that, you know, uh, it is something that everybody thinks doesn't exist. It's something that everybody doesn't pay attention to. But the moment someone sits you down, even as a lay person, as a layman, and someone explains to you what the art department does and its importance on a film, it can be a music video, it can be a theater piece, it can even be an interview that you're just having with someone. And the set is very key
Yeah.
in telling and representing your story. So many people didn't understand where this approach or this where this approach could be placed in terms of filmmaking, because a lot of people I realized were either directors, producers, cameramen, actors, writers. So so there was no technical person, you know, there was no lighting people.
Yeah.
There was no art people. There was no costume people, and that exposed quite a lot in terms of opportunity to showcase to the people that, look, guys, there's quite a lot of opportunities here. Look, there's only all of you are actually chasing the same dream and leaving out all the other things. And who is going to do all those other jobs? So to me, it was an eye-opening, an eye-opener, and also an opening for me to see that there was actually a lot of potential in Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe itself could feed its own cinema by, you know, by creating their own stories, which I think are very extremely beautiful, given the history and the culture. And this is a great opportunity from my experience.
Again, I have been very fortunate because I attended your masterclass. So I actually learned, I feel actually like half a props master after being in your entire class. I really learned a lot. It was super inspiring, and I could see how after some days kind of there was a click and a mindset which changed. All of a sudden people, you know, or people were looking at how their frame looked. And I mean, I think the approach you took, there was shot number 1 where they just went out to shoot. Then there was, you know, interrogation, feedback, shot number 2 and shot number 3. And all of a sudden it was like a difference which was unimaginable. And I think that experience for somebody to see it from stage 1 and all of a sudden within a span of 5 days, you actually see such a big shift. I have the feeling that everyone who attended your class will never look at a frame the same way again. And I think that was very inspiring to see that.
I mean, like I said in the beginning, that it's very important to understand the people you're dealing with, because everybody comes with a different experience, you know, and everyone comes from a different stage and level in film production. So for me, it was very key to see that even the people who felt they were experienced actually haven't had no idea. And if they had knowledge or information before, they didn't know how to apply it. So it was very nice for me to, as well as someone who's sharing this information, to see the evolution from day one, coming in and everyone telling you, coming in their egoistic capacities. And then at the end of the workshop, or 5 days later, someone coming to you and telling you, man, you've totally changed my mind. I don't see films anymore the same way. I mean, I don't watch, I would be honest, I don't enjoy watching movies because I pretty much feel like I'm sitting in a classroom, because I'm very observant, and I use movies to kind of like challenge myself, and also challenge the movie I'm watching, and say, oh, but why did they do it that way? I would like to understand why that frame was done that way, and why would they choose these colors? Why would they choose these temperatures? And so on and so forth. So the evolution is very key. It's very important in understanding this frame.
I think this is the curse of any professional, because you don't, when you're in one particular sphere, I cannot go to any, not even my own festival, not other festivals, I cannot just enjoy films, because you always think the chairs are not right, the screen is not right, you're always in that space of how could it improve. And that is also, I know this about you as well, you're very super critical about your own work. And that brings me to your own evolution. You have been talking about the evolution of the students in the class, but I would also be interested to hear from you your own journey, thinking of being part of the Queen of Cutworth team, which is a Disney production. I could imagine that, however, you are super experienced, but there must have also probably be some kind of a learning curve being on such a big production. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Of course, I mean, Queen of Cutworth was and is still one of those movies I really sit back and say, wow, because it was a huge set. Um, I think I came in on Queen of Cutworth as the most experienced, say, local prop master. There was we had a prop. I had my colleague from South Africa, five of them from South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge was, and this goes, it was a lesson, but it's also something that everyone needs to understand, that I can be a great prop master in Uganda, but I might be not as great when I go to Zimbabwe, because the people in Zimbabwe understand their locations, they understand their culture better than I do. So it cannot just be a copy and paste, it's not a template.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I mean, when Queen of Cutworth started, there was that challenge that I think the art department faced, because there was, like again in Zimbabwe, when the call was made for art people, a lot of people who ran fast to this job were people who are coming from university in the art department of the university. So they thought it was something related to art, painting, sculpturing.
Yeah.
So that was the mindset that also happened when on Queen of Cutworth. But then the production designer and the art director and the prop master, they were looking for a particular skill set. And I was very fortunate, because of my experience and also my track record, my name popped up so many times, and there was no choice but to have to hire me. And I was happy that I was on that job, because for me, it was, again, coming back home.
Mm-hmm.
Katwe is a place that is like my backyard. So I grew up in Katwe, and I felt like for me, that was justice for me to come and be part of a film that was celebrating my neighborhood. So it was very easy for me to come on the job, because one of the plus points I had was it was my neighborhood. So I knew everybody who was on that set. I knew the location very well. I didn't need to do a lot of research, and it was really easy for me to source props in the neighborhood, because people trusted me, and that's something a lot of times you have to establish. You need to establish a working relationship with people, because you cannot do film without a public relation.
Yeah.
You have that relationship, and that helped me a lot, because many people trusted me with their properties, and they could just surrender them to me, sometimes at no cost, sometimes, of course, the production paid for them. But that jail and that trust that the people had in me made it easy for Queen of Cutworth, because a lot of the things we had to get, it was not a set that was built, it was, you had to pick and collect these things from people's homes. So imagine how many homes we had to go through, combing through their, all their little items to be able to bring that on picture. Mm-hmm. And the challenge for me was, because everybody came in, I mean, the people who were, I will speak mostly for my department, because most of the people who came in were coming in at a junior level. So the speeds were not the same. The understanding was not the same. So it took a long time for people to understand that we were actually working on a movie. And that was almost close to the end, when people understood, oh my God, I'm working on a movie. And oh my God, this is happening. And I mean, I'm grateful. They were really great people I worked with. I must say, they are a great team. But that was a challenge, because it felt more like it was a school for me, because I had to learn from and to understand that, people need an opportunity, but you also need to understand that you need to give yourself the opportunity to understand other people.
Mhm.
And sorry.
No, sorry. Yeah. You can finish.
Yeah, and that for me was not was was nice. It was a great experience, But what I learned from it was every film is unique. If you told me to do Queen of Katwe again today, it would be totally different, because the resources and the timing was right for Queen of Katwe to happen. And the team was great. So it meant that there was that automatic gelling. But other than that, I think it's one of my greatest experiences. Of course, I came on to other movies as well. And like I said, every movie presents a different challenge. And it's not a template that you carry on from one project to the other.
So I want to bring it back home. In this case, we are talking of home being Zimbabwe. This year, because of COVID, you're not coming to Zimbabwe, but you're hosting still a masterclass for this year's edition of the festival. Can you take us through that shift? Because now it's also for you, I think, a new experience teaching online. How has that process been, and what kind of is the expectation you have for this masterclass? People have applied, the selection process has been already made. And now we are working towards the actual physical masterclass where all the students come together in Harare, 12, I think, in Harare, 12 in Bulawayo. They're coming and meeting in physical spaces, but you will conduct your class via Zoom, but then you also have a support system in both cities, I think.
It's very weird because, teaching is something different. It's not like holding a meeting online. Holding on a meeting online, you can always sit wherever you are and you talk. But teaching a class, I think to me, I'm here to experience it, because after the class, will I understand the challenges that I faced through the class. But I think it's going to be an interesting approach, in a way that having to have two classes. Last year I had one class in Bulawayo for a week, and then went to Harare for another week with another class. But this time around, we're having two classes being conducted at the same time in two different locations. So I'm very curious myself with the technology and how it's gonna come out, because it's
and I think the interesting part is also that Harare and Bulawayo will meet, and that is actually great, because it is not, you're only talking to one city. You're actually, everyone can actually network and meet each other, which is also actually a great opportunity.
Exactly, because it's what I really enjoy, or what I like about this addition that the European Film Festival added onto their program, the masterclass, is that it's not only the showcasing of European culture and film, but also giving the possibility to filmmakers to be able to take away something home. It's knowledge is priceless. And I feel like the masterclass is offering that priceless offer. It's giving you that priceless gift. And seeing Bulawayo and Harare coming into the same space. Oh my God.
And who is your support? You have some support in Zimbabwe, correct?
I know I have support. And the support is great, because I have Joe Njagu in Harare, and then I have Crane Kube in Bulawayo, and Gilmore and Josh in both cities supporting the facilitators. And I know it's gonna be a great class. And it's a great class, because we have a lot of experienced people this time around coming on board. Last year, I think people were not very sure they were not sure about what was happening, since it was the first stage. But this time around, the applications have been overwhelming. It's not been so easy to come through and come up with the best candidates for this. And it's not really about who is the best, but it's also about the urgency, because for us to be able to support an industry, we need to support people who are already practicing, because they are the immediate change, because they are already in motion. So it helps us. It helps them to quickly go back, and in case they have a production in a year or in 6 months, it helps them to quickly go back and and rearrange their stuff and have better production. I mean, the end goal for all this is to just really better our stories.
Yeah.
Is to be able to tell our stories in the best way we can tell them, and that makes me very curious.
Sounds like an interesting process. I will be a little bit part of your class on 2 days. I'm very excited to be meeting the filmmakers from Zimbabwe. So that's really always a very special journey for also us who organize these festivals, because it's always a lot of technical moments and a lot of preparation, but then if finally something happens, that is then also our work which comes to fruition after so many months. So I'm super excited. But now I want to also bring it back to your home again. Last but not least, you are an African, a Ugandan in particular, living in Belgium, also as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Now and then you're having your own you have your own YouTube channel, you're telling your own story as well. You have been recording short stories about your life and your journey as AK Simba, as a musician, as a filmmaker. You're also a gifted musician. Many people now, of course, we are looking at you as a filmmaker, but I know firsthand that you're a gifted musician as well. But how is it living in Belgium as an African Ugandan filmmaker? Or creatives, maybe, for that matter.
I think I'm not a special case in any way, in any regard. Regardless, locations wouldn't be the matter. I think if you had thrown me in New York, if you had thrown me in Berlin, if you had thrown me in Warsaw or in Stockholm, whatever on this planet, the challenges would be the same. Because one of the challenges that any person who is migrating faces is adaptation and integration. And that is a process that is endless. It never stops. When you skip one, when you overcome one step, there's another waiting for you. So there's always that step you're gonna always have to catch up with, because one, you're not in your own country. Two, it's a totally different network. You have to understand that there's already been people who have been doing what you're doing before you, and better, maybe not better. It's not up to you to decide, but you have to fit in. And a lot of times I say to myself, it's the best way to get into any society is by being humble. And by being humble, that means you're gonna have to understand that you don't know anything about that society or that location, wherever you are, and start from zero. Build your life from nothing, And while you're building your life, people will see you in the process, and they will understand that you are making an effort to integrate in their culture or in their society. And that has been for me, it is not a. I say this because I do get a lot of people asking me and actually telling me how privileged I am to be living in Europe, to be a filmmaker who is living in Europe and made it. Whatever, everyone has their own perception on what success is, and I say, no, look, I could do the same thing anywhere. It is just my attitude and my mindset that varies from most people's. I'm a person who believes that it all seems impossible until it's done. So I don't play victim to myself. So whenever I'm put in a situation, I make the best out of it, good or bad. I'll still go through the experience. And Europe has been it's been an interesting experience for me because it's a totally different setup. regardless, much as technology seems to be global, but the settings are different. You know, the way American cinema is not the same as British cinema. It's not the same as Indian cinema, and so is it not the same in Europe as well. So it's quite interesting for me to see this fusion of ideas. You know, the way I would set up in Europe would totally be different from the way I would do a set in Uganda. So it's the bonuses or the advantages that have come along the way is this difference in culture. You know, it is made. I think that's what gives me a little bit more of an upper hand, because I now understand two cultures differently, and I will not mix them, or I will mix them when it's necessary. So if I'm working on a story that is Afro Europe, you know, I know how to gel the two. If it's African, I know how to totally set up African. If it's European, I understand how to work on a European set. So the combination has been for me the takeaway.
Very interesting. The takeaway, that's very nice. I hope, Simba, that soon we will be welcoming you in Zimbabwe again. I hope it was not your last time. When did you come to Zimbabwe the last time? That was February this year, actually.
I was in February this year, following up with last year's class.
Yes, so hopefully this was not the last time. I hope we can continue this amazing collaboration impacting filmmakers in Zimbabwe. And hopefully we could also have filmmakers attending your workshops, not only from Harare and Bulawayo, but extending to other cities. We have opened up the application. Anybody can apply, but obviously it meant for people to travel to one or the other cities. Hopefully next year you can rather travel to all those cities again and have a physical presence at a festival. That would be really wonderful.
I would love to do that. Zimbabwe is more and more becoming my third, second. It's becoming a home to me. Very nice people, very great stories down there, and a lot of opportunities. I say, and I will say this again, it's a virgin country. It's not even been tapped, not even exploited at all. So for filmmakers out there, it's just a word of encouragement that, you know, you have a great field, a great gold mine under your feet.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is to dig.
Yeah. And if you remember from the year before, I think it was Mr. Butanda from the university, Zimbabwe University, who said filmmakers have no excuses. We all have cameras, we all have phones or little phones. Actually, it's now about telling stories in this new world of digitality, where we can just use our little iPhone or any phone and actually tell still a story. Maybe not with fancy cameras, maybe not with the best light and the best equipment, but a story is, if it's a good story, it's a good story, and it's a good story.
There's nothing like a bad story. Every story is a good story. What matters is how you tell it and how you set it up. If you don't set up a good story well, it will be boring to the audience. What the audience sees is not what you're telling it. They already can hear. What the audience wants to see is where you place your story, the world you create around your story, your characters. And this is where the masterclass comes in, understanding your frame. The frame is not necessarily a picture frame that you hang on the wall. Okay, let's look at it like a picture frame on your wall. But everything that is on that picture, in that picture frame, is what the eye is watching. So it's what you're watching on television. And when your audience is not convinced about the world you're placing your character in, they switch the channel. They move to something else. That's how the eye works. The eye will constantly blink if it sees something. The eye constantly blinks because it's looking for something exciting. So if your set is not exciting, I'm going to blink, and when I open, I want to see something new. So something new would mean I'll have to flip the channel and look for something interesting. So the excuse of saying, oh, we don't have great cameras, we lack the lights, we lack actors, we lack whatever, is absolutely, and I agree with the professor that it is an excuse. Why? Because we virtually have the same technology globally, and we can deliver whatever it is. If something happens in Zimbabwe right now, CNN will not be interested whether you shot it 4K or you shot it on your small phone. All they want is a story, something that is evident that it happened, proof. So for film, it shouldn't be an excuse as well to be limited to our resources. We shouldn't be limited by our resources. We should not be limited by resources, but we should be instead challenging ourselves to use the available resources that we have to make the best out of them and create our own stories so that those stories, the people will know that, of course, it's a boy in the neighborhood. He doesn't have the money to hire a $20,000 camera, but they will understand if it's a good story, set up nicely, and it was shot on a phone. They will understand that that's all you had. You had a small phone and you made use of it.
I think these should be very inspiring words for filmmakers in Zimbabwe. I hope many people will watch and hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for hosting another masterclass at the European Film Festival 2020. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you soon.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Roberta, once again. It's always a pleasure working with you and also working with the European Film Festival. You guys are such an amazing team, and I keep saying that what you guys are doing is incredible, because you're giving not only platforms to people, but you're nurturing a new breed of filmmakers, a breed that will be the next storytellers that will be able to tell, to testify on the processes that are now being taken. And I'm looking forward to being in Zimbabwe again, hopefully very soon, once everything stabilizes. And yeah, we'll have a masterclass next week from the 2nd to the 6th. And I'm excited to meet everybody. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Simba. See you soon.
See you, Roberta.
Bye. Thank you.